Hello, everyone. So my name is Willem, or Will for short. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Momentum Tools. As Kelly mentioned, we've been around for quite some time. We've been working with Podio since 2017 and launched Momentum Tools in 2018. In the first few days, we went even a few times to Copenhagen, to the headquarters, to meet the team there. So it's been a long collaboration. And yeah, I'm super excited today to shine some light on the add-ons that we've built. So for today's webinar, we'll discuss these two add-ons, Power Tools and Dynamic Forms. I'll try to give a general overview of what they can do and give you a sense of like how these can be useful and add value to your day-to-day work. Especially with dynamic forms, it won't be possible to kind of delve into all of the features because it's quite a lot, but I'll try to highlight the ones that are being used the most by our customers and I think can add the most value for you. For the ones that have been around for a longer time, you'll notice that our third add-on, Backup and Restore for Podio, is no longer here on this list, and that's because we actually moved that to a separate project. Pro Backup, we might do a webinar on that later this year or maybe next year. Up to you, Kelly, to be decided when that is. But so today we'll be focusing on these two add-ons. Let me start with our website, momentumtools.io. So for those who are interested, after this webinar, you can visit our website and just either click on Power Tools or Dynamic Forms to get started. When you click login on our website, you will actually automatically be logged into Momentum Tools because we use like the same sort of sign-in or login email of your Podio account. So you need to be logged in first to Podio, like I am here. Here rather. And then you can just quickly log in to our website to go to our app. And on the side here, you'll see the two add-ons. I'll first explain a bit more about Power Tools. So what is Power Tools? Let me click here. It's actually a Chrome extension that you can install to your Chrome browser. It does work for some other browsers. I know that maybe Firefox and some others also support Chrome extensions, but it's primarily built for Chrome, the Chrome browser. So you also have the best experience if you're using Chrome. So to get started, you can click here and then, everything's in Swedish here. But so you can install this from the Chrome App Store directly through your browser, and then you will see this appearing here. So what does Power Tools do? Let me go to straight to Podio, go to the demo workspace that I've made. So this is just the demo workspace that you can install from the app marketplace. I think that's maybe a familiar set of apps for a lot of customers. And let's say we go to the Leads client. Then you see here 4 new icons appearing directly in the user interface. So these are actually the Power Tools, the 4 Power Tools. So we have, if you hover with your mouse over it, we have the bulk edit, Power Export, Sync, and Fields. So if you click here, you can open this functionality. So it's very similar to like along with the reports. But if you click create a report, it's a similar like in-app experience. And that is all done through this Chrome extension. So what are the 4 Power Tools? Let me start with the first one. The most popular one is the bulk edit. It's pretty self-explanatory. Bulk edit allows you to mass update multiple items in one go. So the way that works is that first, you need to go to the app that you want to update. So I'm already in the Leads app. Let me maybe close this. And then you can select the items that you'd like to update. You can select them all. You can also just select a handful. Let me just start maybe with 3 to explain it. And once you've selected the items, you can choose which fields you would like to update. Most fields are supported. Some fields, such as, for example, the location, because I works with like Google Maps and also the websites, are not supported. So these are grayed out. But most other fields, text field, number fields, category fields, also relationship fields, tags as well, are supported. So let's say I want to update the status for these 3 fields. Then I select status. And then automatically, depending on the sort of field type you've chosen, you'll be able to enter a value. In this case, I have selected the status. So our tool will automatically fetch the possible status or category values for that particular field and show them in the dropdown. So let's say I want to update these to hot leads. If I then click here, you'll start the bulk update. And if you then reload the page, you'll see here that these 3 items will have changed their status to hot leads. There we go. So that's in a nutshell what it does. What are some common use cases? It's a very powerful tool to for example, clean up your app, or if, for example, you've added just a new field, let's say a new date field or a new category field, then you can just select all items and, for example, go to that status field and already give a value, or go to that text field and say, for example, a default value, and update the text field for all of these records. And an also powerful tool is also, if you scroll down, you can go to text. You can also bulk update text. So let's say we're just going to do example and example 2. And then if I select, for example, all items, then I can click here, and it will quite quickly update all 25 or 27 records in the app. So if I now click on reloads, open, for example, one item, and scroll down, you see here 2 tags added to this case. It's also very useful to remove data. So, for example, if I go back to the same 3 records, or sorry, if I then go to the tag, for example, you can also remove a tag by filling in a dash like this, like a minus, and then say, I want to remove this tag in bulk from these records. So that's a very handy feature. You've also noticed that for some cases, you'll see here an override existing values. That will appear in the case of tags, because, for example, if you say, I want to, you need to press enter when you enter a tag. I want to overwrite existing tags of these items, then you can select this, and then the previous 2 X that I've added will be replaced with this new tag. This is also useful if, for example, let me go to the expenses app and select these 3 items. It's useful also for multiple category fields. For example, this category, I've changed the template a bit, so you can now select multiple categories. That's not possible with the default app template. But if I were to select categories, I can either select values, and if I don't check this checkbox, then those 2 values will be added to the items. So let me show this in these 2 cases. So I've added food and accommodation. If I now click on updates, it will then update these 2 items. And I see here now all 3 category values have now been selected. If I just select food, for example, and click on override values and then click on updates, and let me refresh, you'll see that the category for the first 2 items have been replaced by food. So that gives an idea of like what you can do to sort of like do data cleanup or simplify data in your accounts. A popular field type is also the relationship field. So in this case, the expenses app points or has a relationship field both to the projects and leads app. So in that case, you can also select, for example, projects. And if you now click the enter value dropdown field, it will look to the project app and fetch all of the values there. If there are too many values, because I know in Podio, a lot of users have often like huge amounts of data, then you can also like search, for example, on the text stream, and it will look through the entire app to find the right projects. Also here, because if you have if the relationship fields allows to have multiple values, like in this case, you can also do the same like we saw with tags and category fields to overwrite the existing values. So that's bulk edits in a nutshell. It's also interesting to point out that you can do this for huge amounts of apps, so even apps with thousands of records. As soon as you click update, though, then the bulk edit has been initiated, and there's no way to stop the bulk edit midway. So once we've collected the data and have sort of received a request of, okay, you can now update 1,000 records, then that process will happen. This also means you can actually do multiple huge bulk updates at the same time. So let's say you want to quickly fill in a date field and a text field and a category field of a huge app, then you can just select all 1,000 items, start the bulk edit for the first job or first request, and then already go to the second field, change a new value, click on updates, and then so on. So that way you don't have to wait till each bulk edit has been finished, and you can just quickly move on to the next value. So that's bulk edits. Let me move on to Power Export, and I'm already in the right app. So Power Exports and Power Sync are closely related. I'll start with Power Export. So the Power Export is pretty similar to the export functionality of Podio. So you can, as you know, you can click here and click on Excel Export, and that will export the entire table. Power Export goes a bit further. As you can see here, automatically all fields that are currently in the view are being loaded. So if I, for example, were to hide some fields, if I then click on Power Export, then the fields that are currently hidden here in the view are not added as a field to the project. So this is useful if you have a huge app and you want to create an export, but you don't want to include all fields, then you can just base yourself and when you open the Power Export. Of course, you can also make some more changes here. So for example, if you want to start with the amounts, but then, for example, you first want to have the status and then the category, that's also possible. So you can just click here and select the fields that you want to add to your export. So you can remove fields, add fields, change the sequence, and so on. When you click here, you also see that you can actually add a few more fields than that are available in the normal Power Export, or sorry, the normal export of Podio, not the Power Export. For example, here the app item ID, Podio ID, external ID, revision ID, and these elements as well. So there's a bit more meta information available in the export that could also be useful if you want to have often for developers or the more technical people that want to, for example, fetch all of the item IDs and so on, then that's possible with this export as well. Let me add, for example, a few fields like that. Another powerful feature, and the reason we call it Power Export and not just Export, is that if you scroll down here, you'll see here suddenly that below comment counts, you see here projects, and then you see all of the fields appearing of the project app. And the reason for this is that the expenses app, as I showed before with the bulk edit, the expenses app points or has a relationship field to the projects app and also to the leads app. So by doing this, you can actually fetch information such as a project title, as well as the status, for example, to the same export. This means I don't need to do an export of the projects table, an export from the expenses table, and then do a VLOOKUP or a match index in Excel to kind of combine the information of two fields into one. So yeah, that's very useful. If you scroll further down, you will see here then the leads have the same fields. So that's a very powerful feature because that way you save some work moving forward. Then you also have the option to save layouts because here you can spend quite some time, especially if you create a bigger report and with a lot of related apps, it can take some time to set this up. So we allow you the option to save this layout. And let me, for example, just call it demo webinar. You can name it whatever. And then when you do the export for the first time, we will create a layout that you then can reuse for future use. So if I now click on exports, we'll see the Power Export at work. This will generate a report or an Excel download similar to the other exports. It also appears here, if you see, as in the messages. So if I click here, you can download this link. You can also click directly here to download the Excel sheet. So if I now click here, you'll see the fields that I've selected, also the revision ID, for example, and also the information from the project app. I see it's empty for a few fields, and I think that's because it's not linked to a project for each item. But so it has fetched, for example, the project name and the project status from the related apps. If I now go back to the same app expenses and close this window, for example, then you see here now a drop-down field where I can easily select the layouts that I've created previously. So you can be in a totally different view. You can also have a filter on, for example. Each time you select this layout, all of the same information will be loaded here. You can then also decide if you say, I want to actually make some changes to this, you can do this on the fly. You can then save it as a second layout, for example. So that all means that you usually have to set up the reports once and then save it, and then it's very quick for you for future use to just always export the export when you need it. I forgot to mention that also the filters apply. So for example, if, let me close this again. If I select on approved, for example, and then click on export, it will just export the items that are in the current field. So then, for example, you could say approved monthly reports, and then do this export, and then it will be saved like this. So that's the Power Export. And so the Power Export will create an Excel export. And that can be useful, but we thought we can push it even a bit further and create a Power Sync. Let me quickly remove this one. Power Sync is exactly the same as Power Export. So you have the same sort of drop-down field where you can select which fields have been added. You can also select fields again from the related apps. And then you can name your sync. So for example, demo sync. And the difference between Power Sync and Power Export is that with Sync, you will actually create a Google Sheet that is then automatically updated when there are changes in your app. So I've now started this first sync. This will now create a Google Sheet in our backends. And then also here, the same thing counts when you click here, the demo sync is here now available. If I click on this link, it will open a Google Sheet with all information of my view, with all related information directly into Sheets. The nice thing with Google Sheets is that if I now, for example, add items in this particular view or in this particular app, or I change some values, then a few hours later, these changes will be reflected in your Google Sheets. So instead of doing always always create a new export by exporting it to Excel using the Power Export, you can also just create one sheet and then use this kind of as your source of truth. Well, not exactly, because there's a delay of a few hours. Not each update is reflected right away. But this is also very user-friendly, because then you can just, let's say, bookmark this and work in the spreadsheets moving forwards. If you just have done a lot of updates, we do have the option to resync your sync. So it's not possible right away because I've just created the sync. But let's say if tomorrow you've just done a bunch of updates and you want to see this reflected in these sheets, then you can actually request an instant sync. And then, the changes that you've just made are available in the sheet. This is useful if you want to do some reporting and you just want to make sure you have the latest value or values. Then we recommend using this resync option. In the sheet here, you'll see that the main sheet export is actually locked, and that's for to make it a bit more idiot-proof, because if you were to change some columns or remove some rows or do some manipulations in the sheet, then it could disrupt the sync. So that's why we lock the main sheet, but you do have the option here to add some pivot tables or add some graphs directly here. So it's a user-friendly way, especially for the people that are handy with Google Sheets. It's a very sort of familiar way to build reports or a pivot table directly on their Podio information. So for example, if I click here, select the whole table. Sorry, this is in Swedish. I should have changed this to English. But if I insert a pivot table, then you can see here, for example, all of the, let's say item ID. Oh, it's a sum. But then you can do handy totals, for example, or handy reports directly on this table. Now it's just only the approved in the view, but you can imagine if you have a huge app, it's sometimes useful to have some summary and a pivot table then. So then the Power Sync is a very handy and easy to use way to achieve this. And then I won't be explaining this much in this webinar. It would take us long, but because we've synced everything to Google Sheet, it also opens the door to connecting this to other tools, such as Google Data Studio is quite popular. So if you're familiar with that, that opens even a bigger box of opportunities, because there you can do really fancy stuff by building your own dashboards and widgets directly into Google Data Studio based on the information that is synced to this Google Sheets. All right, time's flying, so I'll move on to the next and last Power tool, which is called Power Fields. And it's a bit based on the same logic or sort of need or use case like Power Export and Power Sync, because Power Fields allow you to fetch information from one related app to the current app. So let me explain you how this works. The expenses is a good example, actually. So if I now click on new fields, I'll be adding a new field to the expenses app. And again, because the expenses app points to the leads app and also the projects app, that means I can select these two apps. And then I can select, for example, the status field from the projects app. And then I can, for example, give this a name, for example, projects status. And if I click add new field, it will add this field to the app template. So if I now open this item, you'll see here the project status. And then it will also automatically sync the information from that project to this current field. So if I click here, it might take a bit of time until it's being updated, but it's similar to the power sync. It will actually automatically sync the last value of the related projects in this app. So very soon you'll see here in progress being selected. And it's also something that's being synced and kept fairly up to date when you make changes. This the power fields is actually mostly useful if you want to further sort of power up your power exports and power syncs, because if you have a complicated app structure, and knowing our customers and Podio users, this is a very simple like workspace. Expenses point to projects or leads. It's pretty straightforward, but quite often you would have a situation where expenses points to leads, and then leads on their turn points to projects. So by using power fields, for example, you could then create a new field here in the leads app that fetches the project information here by creating a power field. And then you can create a power export or sync that then fetches both the data from the lead, but also from the related project, all into one report that you can either download or like save as layouts for an Excel export, or automatically sync to your Google Sheets. Yeah, that's, I think, everything I wanted to mention about this. This is maybe a bit technical, but I guess once you get the hang of power exports and syncs, it's pretty straightforward, and you can do amazing things. We've seen some very nice dashboards, pivot tables, graphs, everything made by our customers. So it's a very exciting tool and fun tool, especially if you know already your way around in Google Sheets. I highly recommend checking out the Power Sync functionality. All right, then I'll drink a bit of water and switch to dynamic forms.
Well, while you're drinking your water, two things. One, every time I feel like I have a partner webinar where you guys go over your use case or your extension, I always get a little bit jealous because I don't have that. So maybe we'll have to talk offline about getting the Podio team some access to that. I really loved the one where, because you can export it with the relationship field items, because sometimes you just want to know, your entire list of expenses, but what is that related to? What project, what customer, what property? And at least to have, the address or the name, you can have that data without having to manually go through. And I think that's fantastic. We did have one question, and I see, Katie, you have a question as well. Jen, the power tools only seems to work in old table layout. Will they ever work in the new table layout?
That's a good question. We've reached out to Podio actually for this. Currently, it doesn't work with the new table layout. It's still in pending tickets. I actually checked for the cause, or for the purpose of this webinar, what the latest update is. Unfortunately, it hasn't made technically possible for us to use the new table layouts. And it's something to do with the fact that we are not able to easily identify which items have been selected in the new table layouts. It is possible with this item, so we can exactly see now row 3 and 4 have been selected. Last time we checked, that wasn't possible with the new table layout. So that's the main reason we cannot support power tools for the new table layouts. But yeah, we definitely will follow it up, and as soon as the necessary changes have been made, we'll make it applicable for the new table layout as well.
Well, and I will follow up on that as well today. Katie, did you have a question?
I do, thank you. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not my question, but I am a user of the old tables. I'm not a fan of the new table layout because you lose the header. So I'm good with the old, though it would be a good update for those who are using new table layouts. My question is a lot of the fields that we're able to update with the bulk edit or the power sync, the power fields, moving fields, a lot of the fields that I have set up in my workspaces are also triggers to send external emails or update other apps as well. Are those triggers then activated when you do like a bulk edit or a power sync or power fields? Would like my email be sent, or my would another workspace be updated when those fields are updated in the workspace that
it's a really good question. For power export and power sync, we don't change the data in the app itself. So that wouldn't trigger anything. Like, we just fetch information. We don't really do any updates here directly. So in the case of the power export, when you select, for example, a field of the from the projects app, that field stays in the project app. We don't really bring or update anything here in the app itself. So there you're safe. However, with bulk edit, and I'm glad you're asking that question, because yes, if you have set up automations or workflows that trigger things based on certain values, and you then do the update, that will also trigger the update. It's as if the bulk edit is kind of you doing all of these manual actions yourself, but just quicker. So if this action to change it to reject it, for example, would trigger a workflow, then the bulk edit action doing the same thing would trigger the same action. So we recommend to either disable the workflows when you do a lot of updates. I think that's recommended in general anyways. But yes, you can. You need to be careful with that. On the flip side, it could also be a very nice tool if, for example, you want to email everyone or you want to trigger something in batch for people, then you can also use a bulk edit. So it's a two-edged sword, I guess, or two sides of the medal in that case. So yeah. What is Dynamic Forms? It's a work form tool that is specifically built for Podio, and it gives you a lot of extra options compared to the standard web forms of Podio. So I'll showcase this by creating a new form. So I'm now here in the app, clicking on Forms, and I'll click just on Create New Forms. You can choose on two layouts. One is the normal page form, and the other one is the wizard form. This allows you to create a form where it's like a multi-step sort of onboarding guide, or you will see a page in the top. Just to keep things simple today, I'll create a one-page form. I'll select the workspace and the app. Let me think what would be a good one, maybe just the Leads and Clients app. And then if I click Create Form, I go to the web form builder. By default, we would import all of the fields of your app to the web form. So you can leave them all checked. You can also like uncheck some fields and then click on the import fields. I think it's a bit easier if I just start from scratch to kind of show you how the layout works. So for now, I'll click on Start from Scratch. That means that my current form doesn't have any fields. So, I actually made a mistake. I'll create a web form for the Expenses app because that will allow me to explain nested forms as well. All right, so now we're building an app for the Expenses app. So on the web form builder, you see a couple of things. You have the Builder tab. This is where you kind of design your form. You have the Customize tab, where, for example, you give it a title and also translations. Let me start with the Builder. On the left here, you see always two things at least. So you see the layout components and also the app fields. If your app points to or has a relationship field that points to another app, so if it's like an outgoing relationship, then you will even see the fields of that related app. So that means you see here company name and so on, and also for the projects, you will see project titles. So I can also drag those related fields back to this form. So as you can see with Momentum Tools, we've done a lot of to bring and collect the information of related apps into one place. If I click on app fields, I'll just see the fields of the app that I've selected, in this case, the Expenses app. So I can just drag and drop the field to my web form. When I do that, it opens this sort of configuration fields that you have a lot more options in as well. So I'll for now just click Save, and then I can see the field here in my form. Let me also add, for example, the category fields. I'll click just Save just to add it and to move forward. So now I have a form with two fields. I can click Save, and then if you click here on the Share button or the Preview button, you can also use, you can actually already see the form that we've made. So far, things are pretty straightforward. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of functionality in this app, and I'll try to highlight the most important ones. We also have added here the user guide. We have done the same for Power Tools, but I would say it's more valuable for dynamic forms, because if you click here, you see already in a nutshell, like on one page, kind of the core functionalities that we're adding on top of the standard forms of Podio. So this conditional logic, you're able to edit existing Podio items. I'll show that today. You can pre-fill values, there's layout components, and so on. So this user guide place is a really good place to kind of get to know dynamic forms and to play around with it and to really understand what's possible and what's not possible with dynamic forms. So back to the form. If you hover over an item, you see here the option to remove it. So if I click here, it will go back to the left side. If I add it again, then of course it appears again. all the fields that are already added will be grayed out here on the left, so you can quickly see which fields have been used and which ones haven't or are not. If you click here on the gear icon, you see again this configuration tab, and I just want to briefly explain what you can do here. So the first one is to change the label. So you can, for example, make it a bit more wordy and explain what the customer needs to do. In the case of a currency field, you'll be able to choose your currency. And this is, of course, a field or an option that's only available for the currency field. If you drag and drop a text field, you won't see this option. So the options you see here are really sort of tailored to the type of field you're dragging into your form. So we'll also see some other examples, like for a text field or a category field, then you will see slightly different options. Then you can fill in a placeholder. I'm not too creative, so I'm just gonna write placeholder for now. You can add a description. And as you can see on the right, you see immediately what that does with the form. So the description appears at the bottom, for example. If I add a tooltip, I'm just writing tooltip and description. It's not really informative. But then you see here a tooltip appearing that says tooltip. So if you click save here, and if you then were to save the form and here refresh the page, you can see what we've done now. We've added a description, placeholder, and a tooltip. Then let's delve into the other things. You can also disable a form. That means that the customer cannot edit the form. And this is mostly useful in the case that you show an existing Podio form. So I'll show that in a minute as well, how that works, to where you show a form where users can edit an existing Podio item through a web form. So then sometimes it is useful to disable a field. For example, you don't want to, for example, allow the user to change the email in certain cases. So that's why the disabled is useful. The hidden option is seems nonsensical at first, but it can also be used if you secretly, for example, want to preview a certain category field or a certain field automatically, but you don't want to show that information to the end user that's submitting the form, but then sort of behind the curtains, you want to fill in the fields and then hide that from the user. So then when the user submits that form, then that information is captured in Podio as well. So those things are slightly less straightforward, but they open up a lot of possibilities and are often used in certain use cases. Then on this tab, you have the validation. Oh, I should have upgraded to Turbo. But here you can choose to make the fields required. That's pretty straightforward. In our Turbo plan, so we have a 3-tier price plan model. In the Turbo plan, you also have the option to even add regular expressions. So that's, for example, if you want to, if you ask for an employee number and it's always, for example, 10 digits long and it has to start with the number, you can use regular expressions to make sure that the format is is correct. You can also add minimum and maximum characters or do a minimum and maximum number. For example, if you adding a amount, or like in this expenses form, it would be useful to, for example, avoid any submissions for less than $5 or for less than 1 million, for example, if you want to make sure the data is correct. And you can even have the option to add the JSON logic, which opens the door to a lot more techy and more complex use cases, but that will bring us too far to go into that. But the minimum and maximum characters is quite useful if you want to capture feedback and you say, I want to have at least 20 characters so that the users have to say something useful before they can submit the form. Then conditional, this is a big one and a very popular one. The conditional one allows you to hide or show an item based on the value of another form. So let me show how that could look like, for example. So let me, for example, drag category to the top. So as you can see, it's a drag and drop form builder. I want to, for example, only ask for the amount, or let's say description. Let's do it like that. Save. I only want to ask the description if they select food, for example. So then you can click here, go to the conditional tab, say that this item should only be visible when the category is equal to food. Oops. So now if I click save and also save the form, and then I'll go here, refresh this page, then you see that by default, the text field is not shown, but if I select food, then the description field appears. So as you can imagine, this is very powerful. it's very flexible. You can do a lot with it. You can also hide fields based on certain things. A popular use case is that when you have, for example, a category other, that then only when you select other, the user has to submit some information, and so on and so forth. We also see cases where when the form is loaded, the user just sees, for example, first name, and then when they fill in first name, then the second field appears and so on, which is a bit more tricky and maybe more opens the door to some like other issues, but just know that it's possible and yeah, can be very powerful. Then we also have, if you go to conditional, the option to add conditional logic. That's only included in our turbo plan. But let me briefly explain you what you can do. So basic conditional logic is what I've just shown. You can hide or show an item based on the value of one other field. Conditional logic, as you can see on the screenshots, it allows you that to add JavaScript directly here. So maybe it's a bit too small here. Let me zoom in. And you can use that to do the exact same thing. So for example, say show a certain element if another category field is equal to this. But it also allows you to do more conditional logic, such as I only want to show a field if this field is selected and this field is selected, like do an AND statement or an OR statement, like an OR condition, AND condition, exclude condition, for example, only show this field if based on an exclusion of a certain category field value. So you can do a lot with it. You can make this very complex. That's also part of the reason we move it to the turbo plan, because that's typically for the more complex and heavier use cases. It also allows you to kind of understand like what are the external field IDs, the category field values, and so on. So, but just know it's possible. And yeah, some of our customers have done amazing things using the advanced conditional logic. So if I go back here to this field, so I've explained the most, like the three tabs here: display, validation, conditional. Another popular feature of our app are the layout components. This allows you, for example, to add, for example, an HTML element or also just a text. So if you drag it here, you can say, hello, welcome, for example. You can see that it's a web editor, so you can add a whole paragraph if you want, add hyperlinks, add images, and so on. So if you click save here, then this text will appear here at the top of my form. If I save the form and refresh the page, you see this here at the very top. I should have added more spaces to give a bit more space. But so that's the text one. You can also do a lot of fun things with the HTML components. So you could use that to just also add text. But the HTML component is very powerful because it allows you to do to really literally insert HTML into your web form. So that is maybe a bit more flexible than the text editor, because it's also allows you for hyperlinks and spacing or some styling as well. So we are a big fan of the HTML component internally, and we use this typically more than the text field component. Then you also have columns, for example. So if you drag and drop it here, I'm adding 2 columns. Then I can just drag an element here and drag the description here, for example. Oh, let me do the category field here. Oops. Yeah. So you can style your form. You can also decide to even have 4 columns or more columns. You can also either add an entire table. So by default, it will be 3 by 3. And so if you have a lot of fields, like a lot of information, then the table section might be a useful way instead of just adding everything below each other. I'll remove it for now. We also have the tabs, which allows you to create different tabs in your app form. So I can then, for example, add the description here and then show different information of the tab of the web form. The tabs are very popular, and I'll remove it from now. But I would be a bit more careful with the tab component one, because users are typically not used to clicking on all tabs to fill in all fields. So if you have, especially if you have required fields in different tabs, the users don't have like it's not very intuitive for them to click on each tab to fill in all information. So that's why we typically recommend to avoid using tabs too much, or only use tabs to kind of show information. Like you can create 4 tabs with, for example, a different paragraph in each tab. So in that way, they don't have to view the apps, but it's an easy way to kind of collect a lot of information, or show a lot of information on the same web form. Then let me go to the Customize tab. A few things you can do here. You have the form title. Let me remove the F. The form title is useful if you have created multiple forms, so you can keep track of which form is what. It is also the word that's displayed here. So if I now click on refresh, you'll see that the title has been updated. So just keep in mind that the form title will be shown in the browser. Then he, by default, will show a success message. You also have the option to redirect to another page or something else. Yeah, either on your website or make a little bit more of a fancy success message. Because let's say we now submit our form. Let's say this is the amount, food and accommodation. So thank you for your submission. This is what you see by default. But if you want to like redirect to like a more better thank you page with more information, then you can use the redirect URL instead. It's also important to point out that you can embed our web forms. So if you click on share here, you can embed this form similar to the standard Podio web forms. But I can give for a nice user experience if you have embedded a web form on a web page and then you use the redirect URL. So then it's really sort of like a native experience for a user that they think they stay on the website. Then they don't even notice it's a web form and they just think they fill in information on a web page. So the redirect URL is very popular for users that are embedding the form. Down below here, you can select a theme. So there's some predefined themes. So if you save this, you'll impact the styling and the look and feel of the form a bit. You also have some basic options where you can just say, I want a different background color, different primary color. And you can even add your own CSS file. So this is very powerful. We link here to Bootswatch where you can like add some library of other themes to the form. So then you can add the link in here. You can also even add here CSS code to override other stylings. Typically though, if you're embedding a web form to your web page, we recommend to choose this option and not add any CSS because then by default, the elements of your web form will take over the styling of your website and it will feel like, it's already a part of your website. So a lot of people that are embedding the form choose CSS URL and then leave this blank. All right. Then I also want to quickly explain nested forms. So I explained earlier here, we can drag and drop the fields of a related app. And let me just quickly show you how that works. So let's say now I'm adding 2 fields of the Leads app. If I now click save, and let's say I'll select the normal theme just to make it a bit more readable. All right. So let's say I fill in an amount, I fill in a category, and now I fill in, let's say, the lead name and or the company, whatever. If I now click submit and go back to Podio and go to the expenses app and show all items, let me check. Yeah, so that's the item I just submitted. You see here, it has automatically created a new lead and linked the expense to that new lead. So if I click here, you see here both the lead name and the contact name that I filled in, that's already pre-filled. So it allows you to fill in nested items. And if I go back to the form, and you can even do that for like multiple items at the same time. So you can also drag and drop the project fields. You can, of course, style them a bit or maybe make an extra section using the layered components. Yeah, I'm not doing a very good job at styling this form, but you could say lead information, for example, and then drag and drop this whole table in here. I know I'm going maybe a bit too fast to really explain you this, but I just want to give you sort of like a sense of what's possible with this form. So I've now made not the nicest form, but it's a form that allows you to submit expense information and also automatically create a lead and then link that expense to that the newly created leads. So that's that. You can even create multiple nested items. So that could be useful if, for example, you have, for example, an event ticket and you want to create multiple contacts for that event. Then you can drag and drop the top element here to your form. Let me do it here. And then if I drag and drop this field and save it, let me just save the form and go to the web form to show you how this looks like. So now I filled in a data grid. I didn't change the name. You can, of course, change this. But this would allow you to create multiple projects. So it's multiple nested items actually within the same form. So let's say project 1, project 2, and so on. So you can also do that, which is very powerful, and then would create multiple items. Sorry, was there a question? Or nope.
Nope. I think we're okay.
Yeah, all right. Then one of the last things I want to show you is maybe the most popular feature, and I guess why a lot of our users want to use dynamic forms, and that is the option to create or update information of existing Podio items. So if you go to the user guide here, we explain you how you can do this. So if you scroll down, you can actually just show the information of an item by appending the URL. So if I go back to my form here, so this is the form that I've created before. Let me just refresh because I removed a bunch of fields. If I now add this at item ID, then I can just go to my Podio app and then fill in the item ID here, and then it will show the information of the information in Podio. So if I go here to the Podio item of so that's a leads app. If I go to expenses, for example, click here on the developer info item ID. If I now fill this in, you'll see that by default the accommodation is filled in, and that's because this is also here the case. Of course, if you add a lot more fields and you add, for example, also the text fields or the description to the form, then all of that information will be shown sort of in edit mode through a web form. So from then a user could, for example, select two other category fields, click on submit, and if you then go back to Podio, sorry. Yeah, it's not super clear, but this was the same item. So you can see here, we just changed it from accommodation to materials and books and education through the web form. So as you can imagine, this is very powerful. It allows you to very simply share information with external users, let them change information, and especially with the combination of Globiflow workflows, Podio workflow automations, you can build up very interesting workflows where, for example, a customer is submitting the information for maybe a restaurant reservation, and then you can send them an email with some information that's been disabled that they cannot edit, but then they might, for example, be able to still submit some dietary restrictions and then submit that and update the existing Podio item through a web form. So that's in a nutshell what I wanted to explain. Just to really quickly highlight some other things. You can pre-fill values. You have also a very fun sort of way to do service survey that looks like this. So for this, you will need to have multiple sort of questions with the exact same category values and so answers. But then it allows you to build a survey form. You can also do translation. So you can, that's actually on the third tab here. You can translate certain keys, set a default language that also works for embedded forms. So you can maintain in different languages. And I think I've explained most of the other cases. So I think it wasn't the nicest form we've built today, but I hope it gave you a sense of what's possible and sort of the things you can do with it. And on that note, I should also mention, maybe that's sometimes a bit of a challenge, and I guess that's the case for every low-code or no-code app or tool similar to Podio. I think Kelly knows what I'm talking about. Because if you're creative and you can think out of the box, you can really achieve a lot by using these dynamic forms. And we noticed that some customers really like to push it to the limits and to maybe over the limits. Similar to Podio, I know there were some customers that have used it as a proper database. Well, that's not really intended for that use case. Similar with dynamic forms, we sometimes see customers that say, hey, I'm not able to make this conditional logic work. And then we open the form and it's literally a form with 100 fields, multiple tabs. Almost every field have conditional logic. So it's important to keep in mind, you're still building a web form that needs to be loaded through a web browser. So there are certain limitations with that. And also keep in mind the user experience. as a user, you don't want to fill in a web form where you have to fill in 100 fields in one go. Like, so yeah, it's interesting. Like, we've definitely had a handful of customers that kind of want to bend dynamic forms to basically build a proper user portal or a app. But this is still just, you know, a form that needs to be loaded in the browser. So keep that in mind when you get excited and have like huge ambitions when you delve into dynamic forms.
With regards to forms, where is the data sitting for these? Does Momentum Tools hold the data at all, or is it completely stored in Podio at all times? Just thinking around data security and data protection policies and ensuring that the data someone submits is not being stored in another location, even temporarily.
It flows directly through Podio, so we don't store in it for exactly that reason.
Does it not expose the data to anyone who can figure out the web form code and make alterations? Are there any ways to lock that down?
We've done the necessary sort of security layer to not give people too much access, but it's true that, yeah, when you get a URL and you're a bit handy as a user, like technically you could try to fill in, for example, you know, change the number here, and then we show this error, this item does not exist anymore in Podio. That doesn't take away that if they are handy, they can, you know, could like try all numbers that are there, and that way then find all items that reside in that app. That's a risk that we are very much aware of. To be honest, we haven't really encountered this in all of our time. I also would, like, from experience, most customers use the edit item mostly in like an embedded page. And then I guess you have a bit more control of the sort of security things. But yeah, it is, and it's also similar to like pre-filling values and stuff. Like, yeah, there's no easy way for us to kind of confiscate this link. And so if it's super sensitive data, like whatever medical information or stuff like that, then I would not recommend maybe to opt for this tool. But yeah, it's a valid concern, but not something we can. We've done the necessary things to kind of make our tool as secure as possible. You won't be able to like change the code and, like, for example, make a field that's disabled, make that editable. That's not possible. But yeah, you do have the access to the form URL, and you can fill in other numbers here. So yeah, that's a very good question.
Are you able to create any conditional logic to the submission page or redirect?
Yes, we have in the layout component. There's another button as well, and you can do some extra things there. So then, for example, what we then do is actually, we've seen customers using those extra buttons to then, for example, show the submit button or submit button A in a certain case, and then submit button B in a certain case, and then those would redirect to different pages. So yeah, we've seen customers doing similar things in any case. Also, I've seen some partners doing fun things with the redirect URL. You can actually also fetch some information there, especially if you use like the HTML component, or you've added some JavaScript directly in the form. You could do some complex things there. Then also, in fact, for example, some parameters of the redirect URL. So there's sometimes different ways to achieve what you want to do. That said, it's not part of our sort of default drag and drop functionality in the app itself.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Bye-bye.